Hey everyone! So this video is long overdue. I've been really busy with work and trying to find a good time to film with natural light, and now the sun is doing weird things and it's really windy outside, so I hope that the sound quality isn't complete crap, but we're gonna go with it. So hello, I am back and I have had a couple of questions on the video that I filmed about moving to Spain and doing the Auxiliar program. So I'm going to answer some of those questions that people have been asking me and just kind of give you an update as to what happened and chronicle like my journey of going to Spain, what happened and why I ended up quitting, because obviously you can tell with my background that I am home, I'm not in Spain. So alright, let's just get to it. So the first thing I want to talk about is I moved to Spain. So I flew to Spain, had a direct flight, I landed, I stayed in a hostel for about a week and a half. I met my friend Nikki through the Facebook group. She was also looking for roommates, and another girl named Karine had expressed interest in living with us, and so Karine was waiting on her visa still in New York, and so we being Nikki and I, we were looking for 3-bedroom apartments, and it was a struggle. It was really difficult. I thought that, we would, find a place in 3 to 5 days, and that was not the case. It was super difficult. It was like a raging war between like all of these like Erasmus and study abroad students coming into the city, all the immigrants who were moving in, and just like young people who moved to Barcelona because there's like a lot of startups that are there. So yeah, like it was just like peak season basically, and it was not for the faint of heart, to be perfectly honest. Nikki and I would meet at a cafe and just like scroll through Idealista looking for like the newest postings, trying to call those people right away and then trying to schedule a viewing of the apartment like that same day. And we were able to grab one. We ended up settling for a 2-bedroom apartment because we were like, maybe finding a 3-bedroom fully furnished apartment is too niche, like too difficult. Maybe there aren't that many of them. Let's broaden our search to just searching for 2 bedrooms, because Nikki and I like talked and we said, you know what, like we get along really well. Don't mind sharing a room with you. And then Karine can have like the 2nd bedroom if, we don't want to make any assumptions, like, and force her to share with us. So we were kind of like, we can do that, not a problem. And we ended up finding a 2-bedroom apartment in Barcelona, and we got it, and all we had to do was give them like the initial payment, and we contacted Karine just to like double check with her, just to be like, hey, we found a place, and are you still willing to like commit, and we can spot you the money and then you can wire transfer us the money and things like that later. But we need to act fast. And then she ended up telling us that she talked to the embassy or the consulate, wherever she was getting her visa from, and they said that it was going to be delayed until November and that she would have to start the program late. So she was really apologetic, but she ultimately told us that we had to either give up the room or find a different person to take her place, and the apartment was too expensive for Nikki and I just to share between the two of us. Because all 3 of our budgets were looking between $350 and $400 max, including utilities. And so we couldn't find another person in time to fill up her spot, so we had to give up the apartment, which really sucked. And then we ended up finding a shared room in a 9-bedroom apartment on a website called Uniplaces, and Uniplaces is a site that's very similar to Airbnb. So people who are renting out these apartments and rooms are certified, and like it's been inspected by the Uniplaces company, just like Airbnb like comes to like your lodging or whatever, and they take photos of your place and then post it on their website. That's kind of how Uniplaces works. And so we were super desperate at this point because I was staying in a hostel, which was getting expensive, and I was staying in a party hostel because I am a dumbass. That's my dog barking outside. And Nikki wasn't in that big of a rush because she happens to have a Spanish boyfriend, and so she was staying with him until we found a spot. But yeah, I was getting really frustrated and antsy about finding somewhere to live because I also just had so much stuff that I don't want to like have with me cramped up in a hostel. I wanted to like unpack and live my life. But anyway, so we found this room. It was 700 euros, which is very expensive for a shared room. We were paying 350 each, and so yeah, we moved in, and it was good in a pinch, but ultimately, like, it was such a shit show. So basically, this apartment was an old photography studio, and 8 of the bedrooms were single bedrooms with full-size beds, and then the 9th bedroom, which was the room Nikki and I shared, had 2 twin-size beds, and it was very spacious. We had a balcony. It was beautiful. But we were sharing the apartment with Erasmus students and people like doing internships for their universities. They were all Europeans. They were not Spanish, and they were all younger than us. Nikki and I are both 23. We almost have the same birthday, but the girls who were staying in this apartment were between the ages of like 18 and 21. And they were wonderful people. They were super nice, but they were disgusting. They were so dirty, and they were also just like really inconsiderate, going out and partying on like a Tuesday night, and I would have to wake up super early on Wednesday morning to go to work, and it was just a mess. And it got to the point where Nikki barely even was staying at the apartment she was paying rent for. She was staying most nights with her boyfriend, and if I had a boyfriend, I would be doing the same thing too, because it was just very frustrating. You know, trying to talk to people and come to a consensus like, hey guys, let's be more considerate with dishes and just like common spaces and shared spaces, but it ultimately got nowhere. But we had that apartment until the end of December, so we both came home for winter break, and then we were gonna look for a new apartment when the market was less saturated with people looking for a place to live a little bit later down the line. I think we're just both really stupid, but we saw a couple of places that we could have moved into, but it just didn't work out because Nikki's school, while it's not like far away mile-wise from the city center of Barcelona, it's like on the other side of the river, so it took forever and a half to get there. So there were some parts of the city that she didn't want to live in, otherwise her commute would be extra long, which is understandable. And then it got to a point where you know, I had to move out of the apartment that we were sharing, which, by the way, I didn't mention. We were living in Eixample, which is like a really great area. It was a 10-minute walk, not even, to Plaza Catalunya, which is where we both needed to go to take the trains to our schools. My school was only 4 stops away on the R4 from Plaza Catalunya. It was awesome. And then once I got off the train, I had a 10-minute walk to school. My commute was super easy. I couldn't have asked for a better situation. But yeah, so we ended up having to part ways, sadly. And I found another apartment on Spot a Home, which is like another company that's exactly the same as Uni Places. But this time I booked a room for 1 person in a 3-bedroom apartment in Raval, and that was a shit show. It was in the worst street in Raval. There were a bunch of dodgy people standing outside my front door at all times, up and down the street. Just like people who were obviously drug dealers and prostitutes. And while they never bothered me, like no one ever like touched me or said anything to me, I was always being stared at just when I was walking to my front door, and I was always like holding onto my key in my pocket and just like eyes straight ahead, just like waiting until I could just like turn, open my front door to the apartment building and just like go inside and close the door right behind me and then just go upstairs straight to my apartment. It was just really uncomfortable, and I really did not like being there. I had one roommate. The 3rd room was vacant, but my one roommate, he was from Japan, didn't really speak English, didn't really speak Spanish, had no idea what he was doing in Spain or how he was surviving in Spain, but he was barely around. We had different schedules, and then he like went on vacation, and I didn't even get a chance to tell him that I was moving out, like 3 weeks after moving in. And the apartment itself was okay. It was literally the bare necessities that were given. The Eixample apartment was much more luxurious. This apartment didn't even have heat in it and it was freezing cold. My room was an interior room, so there were no windows and it was literally like an ice box. I had to go buy an electric blanket. But yeah, it was not ideal. And then also when I came back, I kind of had this realization where I woke up one day and I was just like, what am I doing here? What am I doing with my time? I don't like teaching. Don't get me wrong, I loved my coordinator. My students were adorable and so much fun to be around and to teach, but teaching is not something that I think I'm good at, and not something that I'm passionate about, and not something that I want to pursue as a career. This was just kind of something where I was like, oh, like I can be abroad and, you know, still have an income. But like it just got to a point where I was like, I'm not having fun. I'm not being challenged. I'm not really, you know, changing or growing as a person. And I kind of feel like I'm wasting my time here. Like I'd rather go home and work a full-time job and make more money. And I don't know, just kind of like figure out the next steps for my life. But I just kind of got over it. And, yeah, that's just basically what it was. So and then that in combination with not liking my apartment kind of, you know, was like, all right, it's probably best to just go home and call it quits. And, you know, I talked to my school and my coordinator and explained everything, and while it was really sad for me to go, I just ended up coming back home. And the worst of it all, though, I have yet to mention, is about my apartment. So I got a knock on my door, and this was maybe about 2 weeks of me living in the apartment, and it was the police, and they were kind of asking me a lot of questions, and this whole conversation was in Spanish, mind you, and they were like, oh, do you live here? And I said yes, and they asked me if I was renting. And I told them I was just renting the room in the apartment, but not the whole apartment. And they said, well, whoever my landlords were, they were not authorized to be renting out the room, because apparently when you are in Barcelona and you're renting out a room or an apartment for profit, you have to be authorized by like City Hall or something like that. I don't know, there's a lot of red tape in Spain, but a lot of people rent out rooms to make money on the side, and a lot of people do that under the table. And I guess somehow this agency that I booked through Spot a Home had been exposed for, I don't know, renting out illegally or whatever. And yeah, and by this point I had already decided that I was going to go back home. And I told the police, I was like, listen, I've been here for 2 weeks. I'm literally leaving in a week. I don't know what's going on. I thought this was legitimate. I booked it through a legitimate website. This was supposed to be completely checked out by, you know, professionals. And they asked me to come to the police station a couple days later for a full interrogation and to help with the investigation. And so that's what I had to do. I had to go to the police station in Barcelona, and the one that's like right off the Rambla. And they asked me a bunch of more questions, just like how I came by the apartment, like what the website is, like explaining to them the process of booking it, and who let me into the apartment and who I got the keys from. And it was such a long process because they were typing up the investigation report as they were asking me the questions, and it was just so fucking bizarre. And with the apartment, I don't know what's going on with the investigation. The police said that if they catch the people running the agency, that they would give me my money back. I have also emailed Spot a Home explaining to them the situation, and I had like a police report typed up that I sent them as proof that like this whole shenanigans went down, and they said they're also conducting an investigation and hopefully I can get my money back, but if not, whatever at this point. The craziness with the apartment and the police and all this stuff, I ended up just coming home, and I miss Spain and I miss the friends that I made there, mainly being Nikki. We eventually met Karine, and she's amazing, one of my good friends now as well. But now I'm home and I'm working full-time, not doing anything special in particular. I work at a cold pressed juice place in DC, but it's a good time. I still have a couple of trips that I have planned to go on, but I figured I wasn't going to get hired anywhere that I wanted to work at full time, kind of like as an adult job, with these trips still planned, because I had these trips planned thinking that I would be home, you know, from Spain at the end of May. But since I'm home earlier, I have to work. So yeah, I'm just kind of like hanging out and really enjoying my time living back at home. My mom is happy that I'm back, and being with my friends. I love my friends to death, so it's really nice to spend quality time with them again. And yeah, so that's kind of like what I've been up to and like what happened with Spain. I hope I answered a bunch of questions for you guys. If you guys still have any more questions about the program in specific, please let me know. I will gladly answer them in the comments, or if there's like something specific about the program you want me to talk about more in depth, like, I don't know, housing or meeting other people from the program, or what my duties were exactly at my school and things like that, because that was interesting. I like helped teach PE, which was not something I was expecting to do, but it was really fun. So yeah, I can make a video about what my duties were at my school and like what my schedule was like more in depth, and like commuting to my school and things like that. So if you guys want to hear more about that, let me know in the comments, and I will definitely try and find some time to sit down and film that video. But yeah, in any case, I will definitely make another video soon about something, and I'll talk to you guys really soon. Bye.